Hello, I'm your host, Jim McClough. Welcome to the latest episode of the Banderflix Movie Review Show here on NVTV. Let's see what movies we'll be talking about tonight. We'll be reviewing Doctor Strange Into the Multiverse of Madness. Our pick of the streams is A Thing from Another World, which is available now on BBC's iPlayer. And our DVD of the week is Uncharted. So that's what we've lined up for you this week, and joining me here in the NVTV studio is Claire McClough from Ormeau Community Cinema. Hiya, Claire.
Hello, hi.
And Aaron Flanagan from the Comic Book Guys.
Hi, Jim.
We're talking about a comic book movie, so we need a comic book guru. But before we get into all that, let's see what you guys have been up to. Claire, I'll come to you first. What have Ormeau been up to recently, and have you anything coming up that may be of interest?
Yes, we just finished actually a film festival called Arabstan, Films of Arabstan, and it had a really great selection of Middle Eastern films, which did really well. It was running for about 5 or 6 days there, and our last showing was outside, which was really nice. We got really good weather for it, for that one day last week. And we also have a film coming up which is part of the Film Hub Collective tour. It's called Here Before.
Which is an absolutely fantastic film, and I know there's a couple of dates coming up. Aaron, we've let Claire sell Ormeau Community Cinema's wares. What about you guys? What have Comic Book Guys got coming up?
We're just finished off the back of Free Comic Book Day, which is one of the biggest days of the year for any comic book store, but we don't rest on our laurels, and coming up next week on the 19th of May, we've got Jason O'Mara. So Jason's been in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., he's the voice of Batman, he's been in Resident Evil, stacks of stuff. But we're doing a private signing event with him Thursday the 19th of May, so get onto our website and check it out for tickets.
Okay, well, we've just had a Friday the 13th, so of course we need to have a Jason reference at some point in the show. So, all exciting things, so let's move on, let's talk about a bit of movie news. Aaron, I'll come back to you. What's grabbed your attention in the world of movies? You have been bigging this up before this show, so what is this tantalising bit of movie news you have for us?
You know me better than most, Jim. One of my favourite types of film are action films, and I recently found out that it looks like Quentin Tarantino is getting the rights to Rambo. I don't know if you've heard about this, and it looks like the person who's going to be playing Rambo, it's not going to be Stallone anymore. Stallone's going to getting on in years, so it's going to be none other than Dave Bautista.
So that's a bit of exciting
There you
news.
go.
I haven't heard anything that, so you have broke that here. I'm sure our viewers will have fallen out of their seats with hearing that news. Claire, can you top that?
My movie news is I'm just really excited about a few films coming up. So the film Nope, saw it in the cinema last night. Well, didn't see the actual film, saw the trailer for it. Looks really good. The new Brad Pitt film looks really good. Jodie Comer is doing the new Ridley Scott thriller film, which is just going to be amazing. She's an amazing actress. And then obviously Shudi got the role of Doctor Who this week.
Yeah, I'm excited about that. I mean, my love for Doctor Who is well known. It's kind of sagged a little bit. I don't mean it in any way to offend Jodie Whittaker. I think she's done a great job. I just think the writing's not been great, but I'm excited to see where this goes. We've got Russell T Davies coming back, his 60th anniversary next year. I think this is an exciting choice for the next Doctor, the 14th time. So yeah, so we have, I was at the cinema going to see Doctor Strange. We're going to be talking about it in just a minute, but I've seen the trailer for the new Avatar film. James Cameron's going to be out in December. We have a title, Avatar: The Way of the Water. Not an exciting title, but hey, I don't know. But I'm going to ask you both, are you excited by this sequel? Are you excited by the fact that it's the first of 4 new installments for the Avatar franchise? Aaron, I'll come to you first. Are you excited about this?
No. Honestly, you know, when Avatar first came out, at the time there was nothing else like it, and I understand, you know, from a viewing perspective, it was like nothing else, but even the trailer, nothing. I mean, yes, it's impressive looking. I loved the ride when we were in Florida, but apart from that, I have no interest in Avatar anymore. I think the time has moved past it. I know it has a massive fan base, and you know, I know that it's one of the most expensive films ever to make, but just really didn't grab my attention. And the trailer, for as good as it looks, I couldn't really tell you much about what's going to happen in it either, so not overly is the honest truth, but I hope I'm mistaken.
Yeah, we'll have to wait to December. But Claire, what about you? Were you a fan of the first Avatar? Are you excited by the fact we're going to have 4 new installments in the franchise?
I mean, I was excited about Avatar about 10 years ago. Was it 10 years ago? Nearly. I just feel like they really dragged it out, and I feel like the momentum of Avatar's probably been lost a good bit now as well. 4 new films. Are they all going to go straight to Amazon or something? Or like where are they planning on putting these films?
We'll have to wait and see. It's in December. But look, one thing we did want to mention is last week news broke about there had been issues with Beck 2 here, a union that represents film crews here in Northern Ireland, and NI Screen had set a warning out to film crews here locally that they were asking too much money and they were potentially risking the future of productions being filmed here. And we've had stuff like The Northman, we have Dungeons and Dragons. There's so many films being made here right now. It's such an exciting time. And we approached NI Screen, we also approached Beck 2 to talk about this. Now sadly we haven't heard back from Beck 2, but we did get a statement from NI Screen. So this is a statement we got from NI Screen. Northern Ireland Screen's focus is on the long-term sustainability and growth of the screen industry in Northern Ireland, and a reminder that relative competitiveness is key to that sustainability and growth was deemed appropriate when reports of extreme rate inflation are being heard from many sources. So yeah, I don't know. As I said, we had approached Beck 2 for a response. I know that they are not happy about this, but yeah, it's going to be a thing that I think is going to run for a little while. And here at Bandiflix, we just wanted to kind of reach out to NI Screen for a statement. So that's that. So we've heard from them, and we'll keep our viewers abreast. But with that, let's move on to this week's big release.
I did what I had to do to protect our world.
You cannot control everything, Strange. You opened the doorway between universes, and we don't know who or what will walk through it.
Wanda, what do you know about the multiverse?
Viz had his theories. He believed it was dangerous.
He was right.
So that's a look at Doctor Strange into the multiverse. I guess there's one person that we can go direct to for this. It makes sense to go through that, of course, is Claire. No, I'm joking, it's Aaron. Aaron, you're from the Comic Book Guys. We occasionally do a little Comic Book 101 feature on the YouTube channel. Haven't done one for a while, must get back to that. So do you want to set the scene for our viewers? Because this is a complicated one for me to kind of get into, try and explain. So Doctor Strange into the Multiverse of Madness, what's it all about?
So this film predominantly is set around a new character called America Chavez, and she's on the run. And during this, she finds that she has the power to traverse the multiverse being a new concept that Marvel has introduced. But as she's traveling through, trying to run away from demons, she encounters Dr. Stephen Strange, who she asks for help. And when she asks him, things go a little bit amiss.
Okay, so perfectly done. What do you think of the film?
Do you know, as soon as I came out of the film, I loved it. I genuinely had nothing but good things to say about it, whether it was because it was Sam Raimi that filmed it, whether it was because it had a lot of sort of harkbacks to the likes of Evil Dead with having a book. You know, he loves these books that have demon-related stuff in it, like the Necronomicon. But I came away from it thinking this was like no other Marvel film I've ever seen before, and I think that's just what we need at the minute. I think that one of the things that we have talked about lots on this show is that every film feels very, very samey. You know, it's got that, very similar pacing. And to be honest, I think people were getting fatigued. You know, when they brought in the TV shows, through Disney Plus, I think it's been a great thing because it's changed up the formula a wee bit. Now this ties in very closely with one of those, being WandaVision, obviously. And at first I thought it was a great idea, but having talked to customers and stuff after it, I'm not 100% sure whether it was the right move, because a lot of people haven't watched those TV shows, and if you hadn't seen WandaVision, I think you'd be totally confused with this. Having said that, if you have seen it and you're giving it a bit of a wide berth, I think if you go in with an open mind, it is a fantastic film, very sort of horror-based elements, which is not like Marvel. I thought it had funny moments in it too, but overall, a very sort of contained story for such a vast story, told in a way that I think is trying to set up what's to come with the cosmic side of stuff. And it felt like it tied in a little bit as well with what had happened with Spider-Man. Obviously, it had introduced the multiverse-based stuff, and this went one step further, sort of trying to explain how those portals are open and things like that. But I think from a comic perspective, it had lots of elements that was Sam Raimi's nods to the comic books. You know, it had characters that we'd only seen in the comic books. There's some of them we can't mention, you know, in terms of post-credits and stuff like that, that are going to play a massive part moving forward. I think that the film itself was the perfect runtime. You know, a lot of these big Marvel films always last 3-4 hours and you need to go to the loo in between, whereas this one was a solid 2 hours. And I don't know, everything about it, I think, just felt right for me. And, you know, as I say, there's people been in who have absolutely hated on it because they're like, that's not a Marvel film, you know, it's really horrific. There's bits in it with Scarlet Witch where she's crawling out of a screen, which almost looks like The Ring. And, you know, I can understand people being a wee bit, it's a bit of a difference for people, but it was like a breath of fresh air for me. I went away feeling delighted having seen it, and I'm looking forward to what comes next.
Okay, well, look, I would love to be as positive about the film as you. I genuinely would. And I don't know, because I have allowed myself to get really excited about this. I am a huge, huge Sam Raimi fan. I love Sam Raimi. He's just a filmmaker that understands the visual concept of cinema. And that comes through in pretty much every scene of this film. I find that having watched WandaVision and loved WandaVision, my major criticism of it is what they do with the character of Wanda. And they basically give us a TV series that I think personally has probably been the highlight of the MCU small screen output, and give us a complex insight into a woman grieving for her partner. And the response of that, without going too spoilerific, is to basically have her as the villain here. And I think that's a really disappointing sentiment to have in this film. I think Elizabeth Olsen is great, but I think she's wasted in it. But that said, I'm not going to hate on it. I think it's just a general sense of disappointment for me of what they've done with that character, but also that in all the madness, it feels like it's trying to go down a horror route, which I love. It's different from what we've seen before. It does feel like a watered down horror. It's a 12A horror film. I'm not a fan of 12A horror films. Look, kids, if you're watch Evil Dead, watch Drag Me to Hell. If your parents complain, just say I said it was okay. Watch that. I would rather watch those, Sam Raimi doing that. But one thing I did love, and it reminded me of how much I loved the Sam Raimi Spider-Man films. I genuinely did. And visually, there's a lot of nods to that, particularly early on, of that style he developed with those first 3 films. I still come away with it a little bit underwhelmed. I think the narrative itself is a little bit meh. It's just a little bit formulaic if you break it all down. But my major criticism is of what they've done with the character of Scarlet Witch. And I can't talk too much about it because it's venturing into spoilers. So, Claire, this is now where we come to you. And I'm intrigued. So we've never I don't think we've had you on talking about a comic book movie.
No, you haven't actually, no.
So, are you a big fan of the MCU? Are you heavily invested? Have you been watching the TV shows? Have you been watching everything so far from the Marvel's cinematic output?
So I obviously got really heavily invested in the Avengers. More so though, I'm more of a big fan of Thor and Guardians. So Wanda, Scarlet Witch wouldn't be my favourite Avenger. So I haven't actually watched the TV show. But I did understand what was going on, surprisingly. And I really liked how they showed her shadow self. I quite like what they did with that. So I kind of disagree with you in that part, Jim. But I really enjoyed the film until I thought about it too much. So if you don't think about it too much, and if you just go in to enjoy the film, and you don't sort of like break it down or analyse it, then you're going to absolutely love it. But then whenever I kind of got home and I was like, actually, because like America, I thought America was a great character, but I didn't think they gave her enough depth at all. I think there was quite lazy sort of character building there for her. Like she could be like the new front runner for MCU. She could be like this new big massive character. And her introduction, like whenever you think of Peter Parker's introduction, like I don't think it was good enough in that sort of sense. But obviously, cinematically, it was beautiful, looked incredible. Danny Elfman on the score, he was really, really good. There was some really awesome bits, and I did quite like the horror elements, even though I don't even like horror films, but I liked how they sort of mixed it up a wee bit. Yeah, it was good. Just don't think about it too much.
Well, there we go. We can stick that on the movie poster. I did enjoy it. I will say this, I mean, it is a lot of fun. As I keep coming back to it is a Sam Raimi film. I think it's the fact that when it goes down the horror routes, I think it's just a little bit tame, but then we have to expect that. I mean, we're not going to get an 18 certificate horror film in the MCU. I still think for me, the high point with Doctor Strange is the What If episode that's on Disney+. If you haven't seen it, check it out. It's a lot of fun. And I cried. But then, viewers, I cry at a lot of things. So look, largely positive. I'm probably the most negative of the three of us here. Will it be our movie of the week? We'll have to wait and see. But let's move on to our pick of the streams.
The Thing from Another World. This is the spot where it was first seen, and these are the first people who saw the Thing. How did it get here? Where did it come from? What is it?
That thing's alive, sir. I saw it. I shot at it. I hit it. I know it. Nothing happened. It just kept coming at me, making a noise like a cat mewing. Captain, it was awful. If you could have seen those hands and those eyes. Captain, you've got to do something about it. You've got.
Is it human or inhuman? Earthly or unearthly?
So that's a look at The Thing from Another World. It's currently available on BBC iPlayer. We're trying some different things with the pick of the streams. This is something that if you have a TV license, hopefully if you're watching this, you have a TV license, it's free to view. So this is something a little bit different. This is Christian Nyby. A lot of people have labelled this as a Howard Hawks film, but it's not. He did direct it. If you've seen John Carpenter's The Thing, I know there's another remake as well, remake/prequel. So Claire, had you seen this going in before watching this? So we know in the past you're not a massive horror fan.
Yeah.
This is horror/sci-fi. So had you seen this before? Had you seen John Carpenter's The Thing before this?
No, I haven't seen this before, so I went into this completely open-minded, I guess that's how you could call it. But yeah, no, it held up well. Like, you know, I guess it just wasn't my sort of thing. Like, I wouldn't normally, you know, go on BBC iPlayer and put on that film that you set us to watch. But I'm sure it was really good.
Okay, so I get a sense that this is not going to be your film of the week. Look, I love The Thing from Another World. I came to that film through John Carpenter's The Thing. And when I talk about this film, I don't want to spend all my allotted time talking about John Carpenter's film. I adore it. It's just a creature feature that probably is the horror film that made me fall in love with the genre. And this is a film that influenced John Carpenter, it influenced Ridley Scott. You can see elements of Alien in this film's DNA. You can, of course, see the influence of why a film like this would influence John Carpenter. But I love sci-fi films from the 1950s. So this was out the same year that The Day the Earth Stood Still. So 1951, both released in the same year. You could argue that these are two sci-fi films that are very much kind of a reaction to the dropping of the atomic bomb. There's elements of that, but I admit it has not aged as well as other films. I think The Day the Earth Stood Still has aged much better than this. But there's elements of this, like there's a sequence where the aforementioned alien is set on fire, is still great in 2022 as it would have been when it was released back in 1951. I'm a Howard Hawks fan. I have a soft spot for him as a filmmaker and as a producer. He's someone who had mass ambitions, but he knew what he could do within the confines of a B movie. I think John Carpenter probably improved upon this. There's too many characters for me in this. He strips it all back with his film that was released in the 1980s. If you haven't seen, like, I don't know, I mean, they're two completely different films, Claire. You're not a horror fan, so John Carpenter's film might not be for you, but I think this is well worth a watch. Aaron, what about you?
Yeah, I mean, when you set us the task of watching this, I initially thought, my goodness. I mean, I don't mind. There's a lot of films from the 50s, the 40s, 30s that I have a great affinity to. Things like, you know, obviously War of the Worlds, the Marx Brothers, you know, even the Universal Monster stuff. So I give it a wide berth at the start of it. And initially, when they started talking, I thought, this is terrible acting. Everybody sounded like they were talking over each other, and it felt really, I just didn't enjoy it. But as it got on, I realised that the interplay between all the characters was supposed to show the sort of the manic nature of not knowing what was going on. And I think the best thing that I enjoyed about this film, I know you say you do see bits in it, was what you didn't see. You know, especially at that time, I think horror's moved on so much and thrillers have moved on so much. But I think the unseen parts where it was all in your mind thinking, what are they about to see? You know, you just see a wee bit in the shadow there. And it was class because so many other, as you've said, filmmakers and directors have went on to use that and take it one step further. So it was the first time I'd really seen anything like that done, actually, because I've watched lots of films from that time, and those B movies usually show you horrible, you know, claymation type stuff, stop motion, and that's why I thought this was pretty cool. So, you know, as I say, initially when I started watching, I sort of thought this is going to be rubbish. I loved the Carpenter version in the 80s, absolutely loved it. Very different film, completely different actually, but you can see how it influenced the decisions for things like Aliens for sure.
Yeah, it's a very different film, and it's a very different film from even the original source material. You know, Carpenter's film is much closer to the original source material. The kind of body shifting, shape shifting aspects, and the fact that we don't see so much of the monster is basically down to one of two things. Budgetary issues meant that they were never happy, so that's why we never really see that much close up. And you know, they understood that. You know, this is dubbed as one of the major creature features. I think that's slightly unfair because we had Frankenstein out 1931, 20 years before this. You can see a film like this, how it set a blueprint and how it can influence filmmakers, and I think that's why its legacy will always be there. And those last few lines, "Look to the skies," has become iconic. Claire, before we move on, has this tempted you to go back? Like I've mentioned, like The Day the Earth Stood Still. Would you be tempted to go back and look at older films from that period again?
Like I would be a fan of like more classic Hollywood films. Sci-fi wouldn't normally be a genre that I would necessarily go to, so I just think that the film kind of wasn't really for me. But like now that you've explained that you see the influences and things like that, I probably should have given it more of a chance. Will I watch it again? Probably not, but I should have given it more of a chance in hindsight.
Look, as long as I hasn't come across as I've tried to mansplain, that is the key thing. Look,
oh no, it has.
That's okay. That's what we go for. That's what our viewers expect. Look, with that, I think we shall move on and wrap up this week's show with our DVD of the week.
Hey, kid. A little young for a bartender, aren't you?
A little old for prom, aren't you?
Everything in here. Why the map?
This is the path that Ferdinand Magellan took to sail around the world.
You know your history.
It's the biggest treasure that's never been found.
5 billion, easy. I think you're here because you're your brother.
Well, you know my brother, Sam?
If we find that gold, we find him too.
So that's a look at Uncharted. It's out on DVD now. Tom Holland, he seems to be everywhere right now. You can't turn on your TV without Tom Holland being somewhere. So this is the big screen adaptation of the PlayStation gaming franchise. I'm a huge fan of the franchise from a gaming point of view. People will hear in a minute what I think, but Aaron, we'll come to you first. What do you think?
I've dipped in and out of the games. My partner, she's a massive fan of the games, and we watched it together, and it was good to see the difference in viewpoints as we were watching it. Because I've dipped in and out of it, I actually quite enjoyed this film. It felt like just a good old sort of swashbuckling heist film, you know, a bit like National Treasure, a bit like Indiana Jones. Not on the same level as those films, for sure, but it just was a good, fun hour and a half. Could sit and eat popcorn if I had wanted to and watch it without thinking too much about it. And it had the spirit, I would say, of when I was playing the game. It had that type of feeling about it. But sitting with somebody who was an absolute mega fan, who's met people like Nolan North and Troy Baker, she was utterly disappointed that it was nothing at all like the games. There were certainly moments that they've crammed from every single game and tried to make it into one film. Casting choices, wasn't a fan. I think if you're a fan of the games, people like Victor Sullivan, who Mark Wahlberg plays, should have been somebody like Sam Elliott. Should not have been, you know, a Mark Wahlberg character, especially because he's still a leading man. He's not somebody who plays the secondary, tertiary character. Tom Holland, being the Nathan Drake, is never Nathan Drake. Even I know that, and I'm not a massive fan of the games. You know, he just felt like Spider-Man without a suit on in this, you know, jumping about the place. But again, I enjoyed that because it was just fun. I didn't take it too serious. It didn't hurt my brain watching it. I just thought, you know what, this is a good fun watch. But as I say, if you're a die-hard fan of the games, I can see why this would have frustrated people, because it was a long time in the making. People like Nathan Fillion had always been tipped to be Nathan Drake. And I just think that the casting, although they're going for a younger audience, didn't quite work necessarily for this film.
Okay, I pretty much agree with everything you're saying. I think it's a perfectly serviceable blockbuster. You know, it's A to Z, it's, you know, designed by committee, it's the jigsaw, you can see everything being put into place. I do think, I come back to the point I made at the start, I think Tom Holland's a little bit suffering from overexposure. He just seems to be in everything at the minute, and I love him as an actor, so I'm not going to criticize him for that. I just think it's just, there's nothing special about it. For me, there's nothing that makes this stand out. You know, you've mentioned stuff like National Treasure. This for me is stuff like The Mummy. You know, it holds a candle to Indiana Jones, but it's nowhere at that level. I think the amount of green screen probably limits that, but there's a couple of sequences that are done. You can see they've been done physically, but I think it's just a perfectly serviceable action movie. I'll probably have forgotten it in probably a week or two. When I turn it on, it's like, oh yeah, I've seen this. But you know, there's nothing special about it. What about you, Claire?
Yeah, like I agree with you guys. It was like there was action, there was excitement, I guess, but it just wasn't like memorable action. Like you could watch it, say, just stick it on. You don't have to think about it too much. You know, the plot is quite basic. Tom Holland is extremely charming in it. I'd like to thank Mark Wahlberg for making him look like such an amazing actor, because I can't take Mark Wahlberg seriously at all. I feel like he either plays himself or he plays a parody of himself, and it's just the same in every single film, apart from a few. But you know, it was decent enough. I have actually heard quite a lot about the casting choices and how they've been wrong. Namely, Tom Holland, apparently he's nothing like the character on the game, and they've made him more sort of, maybe more clumsy, more relatable. But he is so charming on screen, and I thought he was fantastic, but he could be slightly oversaturated at the minute.
Well, just coming back to your earlier point, Mark Wahlberg speaks very highly of you, just to say that. But I can understand why, from a producer's point of view, they've tried to do what they've done. They haven't just tried to replicate what gamers have played on screen. They've tried to go younger. I completely get that, and I think there has to be a certain sense of creativity involved to be able to bring these things, because otherwise, if you're just going to replicate what has been in a video game, what's the point? A gamer who's played it can just literally just plug it in and replay it. They've tried to do something different. I get that. I just think the end result is just something that's just a bit meh. It's the dreaded cinematic 3-star meh for me. I think it's perfectly fine, perfectly serviceable. I come back to the point I made. I've probably forgotten already I've made it, but I come back to I will have forgotten I've seen this in a year or two. And when Uncharted 2 and 3, 4, I'll probably go see them and I'll forget them all the same. But look, that's that for this week. This is the important thing. I get a sense I know where this is going to go, but this is our movie of the week. Of the 3 films we've discussed this evening, what are you each going to pick as your must-see for our viewers to watch this weekend? Aaron, I'll come to you first.
It has to be Doctor Strange.
Okay, well, I no surprises there. I'm going to say The Thing from Another World, because right now it's free to watch. If you've got a license, if you've got the iPlayer, you can check that out for free, and you're seeing a bit of cinematic history. Claire, what about you?
I'm going to pick Doctor Strange.
That's okay. I can't win them all, so our movie of the week this week is Doctor Strange Into the Multiverse of Madness. So check it out this weekend if you get a chance. That's us pretty much out of time. So all that's left for me to do now is thank my 2 guests. So thank you very much, Claire.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Aaron.
Thank you.
Thanks very much for watching at home. We'll be back next week with another episode. But for now, until then, goodbye.